In this lesson, we're going to get started with the study of Theophrastus' characters. And what I'd like to do in this first lesson, before getting into the actual first lesson, I'd like to just give you a little introduction to Theophrastus' characters, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about why we're studying this book in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy and how it can help you. All right? So, the title of the course in the Academy is Theophrastus' Characters, and this is a course that I recommend to young students. So when kids just get started in the Academy and their parents ask, where should we begin? I say, well, I'd like the kids to study philosophy, and as crazy as that sounds, there are some ways they can do that. One of them is to study Aesop's fables, and another is to study Theophrastus' characters. Both of them are good courses for young children, but they're also good for older children, okay? They're also good for older students. So just because you're older doesn't mean there's nothing for you to learn in Theophrastus' characters. It's not baby work. It depends on how much you meditate on it and whether you actually apply it and practice it in your own life. So when we look at philosophy, and philosophy is not a part of the modern high school curriculum. As crazy as that may seem, to get a modern high school diploma, there's no philosophy requirement. That's really ridiculous, but that's how modern schools work. There's no philosophy requirement for a high school diploma. If we're going to study philosophy, we're going to do it on our own outside of a high school curriculum. But when we look at philosophy, when we talk about philosophy, philosophy is a Greek word that simply means the pursuit of wisdom or the love of wisdom. That's what philosophy means. A philosopher, a true philosopher, is simply a person who desires wisdom, who devotes his whole life to the pursuit of wisdom. When a man falls in love with a woman, he doesn't just think about her once in a while, right? When a man falls in love with a woman, when a man loves a woman, he pursues her with all of his thoughts, with all of his might, with all of his time, right? Men do all kinds of crazy things for love. There are fables. Remember the fable of the lion who falls in love and he agrees to have his teeth taken out and his nails cut off? You know that fable? And the moral of that fable is love can lead us to do foolish things, because when a man loves a woman, he often becomes obsessed thinking about her, right? He wants to be with her all the time. That's what it means to be in love. And so a philosopher is a person who has that love, that desire for wisdom. And he devotes his life to the pursuit of wisdom. So when you look back in history and you think of somebody like, you think of Solomon, you think of Socrates and Aristotle, these famous ancient wise men, they devoted their whole life to the pursuit of wisdom. When you think about monks and nuns who devoted their whole life to religion, they devoted their whole life to the pursuit of wisdom. They were philosophers. They were lovers of wisdom. And philosophy is a study of wisdom by people who love it or are learning to love it. That's what true philosophy is. And when we get into philosophy, there are three basic divisions of philosophy, and we study all of these in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. Three basic divisions of philosophy, and you should learn these. The first division is rational. The second division is moral. And the third division of philosophy is natural. And we'll talk a little bit about what these are, just quickly. To understand what wisdom really is, wisdom, and I don't want to get into too many difficult thoughts for you, but wisdom is the desire to know, or the knowledge of the order of all things. Wisdom is the knowledge of the order of all things. Remember in arithmetic we learned that science is knowledge properly classified, organized knowledge. Wisdom is the knowledge of order in everything. So what it means to be wise in any different area means to know the order that God has created in every different area of life. The three main kinds of order, or the three main areas that we seek to understand: rational philosophy, moral philosophy, and natural philosophy. Rational philosophy has to do with the study of our own reason, studying to learn the order of our own thoughts and how they should be ordered, organizing our own thinking. That's what we study in reasoning. So in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, when we study classical reasoning, we're studying rational philosophy. We're seeking to learn how our minds work and how our ideas should be ordered. I'll repeat that because it's important. In rational philosophy, we seek to know how our thoughts should be ordered so that we can be wise. That's the pursuit of rational philosophy. And like I said, we study that in classical reasoning. The second division of philosophy is moral philosophy. And in moral philosophy, we seek to order, to know how our will should be ordered, how our emotions, how our actions should be ordered. We seek to know the order of right action, right living. We seek to order our will according to God's will. That's what moral philosophy means. Learning how to be a virtuous, good person. And then finally, natural philosophy. Natural philosophy is the study of the order that God created in the natural world. And the study of those three subjects is what the ancients considered to be philosophy. Rational philosophy, moral philosophy, and natural philosophy. Studying to know the order of our thoughts, or to order our thoughts, to order our will through moral philosophy, and then to understand the order of nature. Not to order nature. We don't go out into the world and order it and create order in it. It's already ordered by God. We study to understand that order so that we can do things wisely. For example, if you're going to have a garden, if you're going to create a garden, you have to know how God created the world to work, because you have to organize your garden. You have to organize your garden in agreement with nature. You understand that? If you go out in January and plant tomato seeds, your garden is not going to work because you're acting contrary to nature. Seeds don't get planted in January, right? That's not how nature works. You have to learn how God created the world, because everything has its own time and place. Some plants get planted in January. Some get planted in March, some in April, some in May, some in October, right? God created that order. God created the plants. And to be a good gardener, you have to learn that order and then practice it in your garden. And if you live according to that order, your garden will grow and you'll have a fruitful garden. And if you live contrary to nature, everything will fail. You can't live contrary to nature. So these three different divisions make up classical philosophy. Like I said, we study rational philosophy in reasoning. We study moral philosophy in classical ethics. That's the main source for our study of moral philosophy in classical ethics. And then we study natural philosophy in two different sources, in classical physics and in classical metaphysics. And I'll write ethics over here. And I'll change this to reasoning. So if you want to know where do you study philosophy, the answer is in these subjects in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. That's what we study. In classical reasoning, we study rational philosophy. In classical ethics, we study moral philosophy. In classical physics and metaphysics, we study natural philosophy. That's where you learn philosophy. Those are the main sources. And what's interesting about all of these sources is that they have one author. And the author of these books is Aristotle. Aristotle is the author of the art of reasoning that we study. Aristotle is the author of classical ethics. Aristotle is the author of classical physics. And Aristotle is the author of classical metaphysics. He's a smart dude. He wrote the book on wisdom. Okay? He's so wise that St. Thomas Aquinas had a name for Aristotle. He called him, quote, the philosopher. Oops. The philosopher. That was his name. That's a pretty good name. To have St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the wisest men who ever lived, refer to you as the philosopher. Aristotle is our teacher in philosophy. The problem with studying Aristotle is that Aristotle intentionally wrote in a way that was difficult to understand. He did it on purpose so that fakers couldn't study his stuff. If you're not committed to wisdom, if you don't love wisdom, if you don't seek wisdom with all your might, you're not going to be able to read and understand Aristotle. He did that on purpose. Okay? So to get started, especially if you're younger, you're not going to get started reading Aristotle. There are simpler ways to get started. To get started with reasoning, we start with grammar. You start learning about words and sentences and things like that. Grammar really is the beginning of your reasoning study, rational philosophy. To study natural philosophy, we study natural history. We study Pliny's natural history, right? You could just go outside and start working in the garden and taking care of animals, and you'll learn a lot about natural history. But we do that by what's called natural history. That's how we get started in natural philosophy. But with moral philosophy, we have a couple of important sources. And I'll just draw an arrow down here. Like I said, there's two good sources that you can use to begin studying moral philosophy even when you're young. The first one is Aesop's Fables. That's a good way to start learning moral philosophy, by Aesop's Fables. All of his stories have a moral. They have a moral point or a moral lesson. You can learn moral philosophy in Aesop's Fables. And the second source that I recommend for students is Theophrastus' Characters. Those two books are what we recommend for younger students getting started in moral philosophy. Aesop's Fables and Theophrastus' Characters. Now, who in the world is this Theophrastus guy? That's a good question. We want to learn Aristotle's philosophy, right? Aristotle's the philosopher. But his writings are difficult. And usually people are not able to get started with his writings without doing some other studies first. So if you wanted to learn Aristotle's teaching, where do you think a good place to go might be? If you wanted to learn Aristotle's teaching, but Aristotle chose to write in a difficult way, where do you think we might go to learn and understand what Aristotle taught? Any ideas?
Library.
Well, no, I'm talking about where would we learn Aristotle's ideas from?
Theophrastus.
Yeah, Theophrastus, okay? But there's a reason why. Theophrastus was one of Aristotle's students. So Theophrastus was actually a student of Aristotle who lived with him, studied with him, was taught by him, could ask him questions. Okay? Theophrastus was Aristotle's student. It's like, how do we learn about Jesus? We ask St. Peter, right? We ask St. John because they were his disciples. Theophrastus was Aristotle's disciple or student. Not only that, but when Aristotle died, Theophrastus was left in charge. So he actually became the teacher in Aristotle's place at Aristotle's school. So Theophrastus is important. We study Theophrastus in natural philosophy because he wrote a book called The History of Plants. We study that in natural philosophy. But he also wrote a book called The Characters. And we study that to get started in moral philosophy. It's a good way to get introduced to the ideas that we're going to study later in Aristotle's Ethics. Okay? So when I ask, why do we study Theophrastus' characters? There's a few reasons. Why study Theophrastus' characters? First of all, we want to learn the moral philosophy of Aristotle. And we can find it in Theophrastus' characters. Okay? Secondly, we study Theophrastus' characters because they introduce us to moral philosophy in a way that's easy. They help us to prepare to study Aristotle's ethics. And the third reason why we study characters is because in your own writing, if you ever want to write stories or anything like that, the characters help you to understand how characters are created by their virtues and vices. Every one of us can be sort of described by the virtues that we have and the vices that we have. You know that there are things that are good about you and things that are bad about you. Right? You think of different people in your life. You can think about different people and you can say, what's good about him is this, this, and this. What's bad about him is this. And everyone's got this different mixture of virtues and vices. Right? You know, that mixture makes us what we are. That's our character. And so what Theophrastus did to teach moral philosophy was he wrote little descriptions of common characters, usually of bad characters, so that we can learn to look out for bad characters, we can learn to identify bad characters, and we can avoid becoming bad characters. All right? So in every lesson in Theophrastus' characters, we're going to study one character. I think all of them are bad, so they're bad characters. And the goal of that study is so that we can examine ourselves and judge whether or not we are like these bad characters. And so we can amend our life and change our behavior so that we don't live like these bad characters. It helps us understand ourselves a little bit. The first one we're going to study in this first lesson is the dissembler. So what I'm going to do as we read through this, we're going to study the dissembler, He's the first character. We're going to make a list as we study. The first character is the dissembler. As we read, we're going to make a list of some of the qualities of the dissembler. What is a dissembler? How can we identify a dissembler? What does a dissembler do? The problem that students have with these lessons that I want you to try to avoid is when we get into the character, it's going to be very specific what a dissembler is. Okay? When I ask students questions about the characters, one of the reasons why they can't pass their assessments is because they're not clear enough. They don't go into enough detail. For example, a dissembler is not just a person who lies. You can't say a dissembler is a liar, because a liar is a liar. Dissembler is something else. You can't just say a dissembler is selfish, because a dissembler is something else. We want to get into the real details of these characters. Do you understand that? Not just give these general lazy descriptions. When we say what is a dissembler, we want to know exactly what a dissembler is. What exactly does he do? He's not just a liar. There's something more than just being a liar. He's not just selfish. There's something more about a dissembler. More detailed. Okay, so let's read through this lesson together, and we'll make a list of some of the qualities of the dissembler, and we'll make sure we understand exactly what the dissembler is. This is the first lesson in Theophrastus' characters. We'll take a look at the text now. The dissembler. Every word, every action, every word and every action of the dissembler is an artifice, some kind of design. Every word, every action of the dissembler is an artifice by which he labors to conceal some evil intention. An intention is a desire, something he intends to do. His intentions are evil. Every intention is evil. And he is constantly laboring to try and cover his evil intentions. So he's always concealing evil intentions. All right? He doesn't appear to be evil. He doesn't appear to be evil because he's concealing his evil intentions. And that's what makes him dangerous. He doesn't just come to us like some terrible evil villain from a story. The problem and the danger with the dissembler is he appears to be innocent, but he's secretly evil. That's what makes him dangerous. A man of this sort, the lesson goes on, a man of this sort approaches his enemy with professions of friendship. Let's quiet down a little. A man of this sort approaches his enemy with professions of friendship. He pretends to be friendly. And this is a danger of saying, oh, Mr. So-and-so, he's friendly, he's nice. Well, that may be good, but he also may be dissembling. He may be concealing evil intentions by a show of friendliness or being nice. It's easy to be friendly if you don't care about people. You can just always be smiley because you don't care. He approaches his enemies with professions of friendship. He flatters those against whom he is secretly plotting mischief. He's secretly plotting to harm them, but he flatters them with his talk, says all kinds of nice things to them, while he secretly is planning and working to do some evil to them. He's a dissembler. He condoles with them on the day of their calamity. That means he grieves with them, and he pretends, he's not real. He pretends that he's sad for them when he sees that they're having some bad fortune. He pretends to be sad for them, but he's really not. To one who has defamed him, he proffers, or he pretends to offer his forgiveness, but he doesn't actually forgive. He pretends to forgive because that's part of how he covers up his evil intentions. He pretends to be forgiving. He's, oh, it's okay, no problem. But it actually is a problem. And he's planning some evil, but he just says, oh, don't worry, I forgive you. It's no problem. But that's not true. He doesn't forgive. He receives contumely with patience. That looks like a typo. So let's just ignore that for now. He soothes with blandishments those who resent the injuries they have sustained from his villainy. In other words, he does evil to people and then he soothes them. It's like when kids fight and they try to cover it up before mom finds out, right? You do something bad, you punch your brother, he starts to cry, and you're like, no, stop, it's okay, right? Like you're all of a sudden concerned about the kid you just punched in the mouth. Right? But you suddenly think about getting in trouble, and you try to soothe the person who suffers from the injuries that you inflicted on him, right? You know, when you've done that before, right? That's an example of this dissembling. You're pretending like you care about him. Like, oh, come on, buddy, it's okay. You just punched him, right? You just did something bad to him, and now you're pretending like you care. That's dissembling. You don't really care about him. You're just trying to not get yourself in trouble. So you have to pretend that he thinks that, everything's okay, buddy. You're okay. You're just bleeding a little bit. It's okay. Right? Don't scream. Don't tell mom. I love you. I'll take care of you. That's dissembling. Okay? The dissembler, from mere habit, will evade any direct application that may be made to him. He evades applications made to him. That means he doesn't like to be asked to do things. Why? Because he's not really doing what it looks like he's doing. Okay? So for example, let's say a man goes to church. He really is not interested in church. He's planning to steal something from church. That's why he's at church. And let's say the priest comes up to him before the service and says, hello there, friend. Would you mind helping us during the Mass today? Would you mind, bringing the gifts up? Would you mind helping the deacons to collect at the offering time? Do you think that dissembling man who's there to steal is going to want to be asked to help with something when he's there? No. He's not really there because he's interested in the Mass. He's there to do something evil. And so he doesn't like to be asked to do things. He tries to avoid making contact or eye contact with anybody. He just wants to be left alone because he's waiting for an opportunity to do something evil. He says, call on me tomorrow, right? Oh, you know what? Let me think about it. Maybe I'll get back to you tomorrow, or why don't you come by and we'll talk about it tomorrow. It's like when you ask your parents to do something and they say maybe, right? There's no such thing as maybe. If you ask your parents, can I go outside, and they say maybe, it's no. They're just not telling you no. Okay? If they thought it was good, they'd say, yeah, sure, you can go out at playtime and do that, right? But when they say maybe, that's a dissembling way of saying no, you can't do that. But I don't want you to get upset, so I'm going to say maybe, so you still have some hope, so you don't throw a tantrum, but the answer really is no. Okay? He says, come back tomorrow. Call me tomorrow. But he's not being sincere. He's just trying to get out of that situation. He says, call me tomorrow to a person who seeks to speak with him on business that admits no delay. There's something important, but he says, let's talk about that tomorrow. But it's important. We should talk about it now. To elude inquiry, to avoid being questioned, he pretends that he has just returned from a journey. He pretends like, oh, I just got back, but it's not even true, just because he doesn't want to talk, right? And remember, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but the reason why he does it, this is what you have to make sure you pay attention to, the details. The reason why he does all these things is because he's trying to carry out some evil plans. And he's trying to cover up his evil intentions. That's why he's doing these things. Right? A person may be tired and may sincerely say, look, can we talk about this in the morning? I'm really tired. And he may be telling the truth. The dissembler is not telling the truth. He's saying these things to cover up his evil intentions. He tells those, let's go down to the next paragraph. He tells those who would borrow money from him, who need some help, who need to borrow some money, or who demand the sum that he has subscribed to a contribution, that he has not taken a sixpence of late. In other words, when someone comes and asks him to borrow some money, he says, I'm having a hard time, I don't have any money right now. If someone comes to ask for him to repay some loan he borrowed, he says, look, I'm having financial trouble. I'm not able to pay you right now. Give me some more time. And again, that's not necessarily bad if it's true, but with him, it's not true. He's a dissembler. He's concealing his evil intentions. He doesn't want to repay the loan because he would like to steal the money and keep it. The wicked man borrows and doesn't repay. When trade is dull, when there's not much business, he boasts of his dealings. He boasts about his business. He pretends not to have attended to what he has heard. So he hears something, but he pretends to not hear it. Because he doesn't want the person to know that he heard it, because he wants to use it against them. So he pretends he didn't hear it. He feigns not to have attended what he has heard. He professes not to have observed what just happened before his eyes. And the reason why is because he would like to use that against the person, but he doesn't want them to think he saw it or he heard it. So he says that he didn't see it, didn't hear it. He takes care to forget his promises. He is fertile in evasions, that he's very good at coming up ways to avoid things. He's fertile. He's very productive in ways to get out of things. Now he proposes to take an affair into consideration, and then now he knows nothing of it. All of a sudden he forgot. He is amazed at what is told to him, or it agrees exactly with his own opinion. He just says whatever works in every different situation. He's not sincere, not honest. He makes himself remarkable by his frequent use of certain phrases. And it lists a bunch of phrases there. All fake phrases like, oh, I'm surprised to hear that, when he's not surprised to hear that. He may already know it. Going on to the last page to wrap up with this. Beware of one who employs these artfully woven and often repeated phrases. Beware of people who use this fake speaking, these fake phrases that are used to cover up their real intentions. These artfully woven, often repeated phrases which commonly serve to cloak the worst designs, the most evil intentions. A man in whose manners there is no simplicity. This is the real key here. A man in whose manners there is no simplicity. So he's not simple. He never answers a question with a simple, honest answer. It's always some fake talk, some fake emotion, trying to be nice. He doesn't just answer simply. A man in whose manners there is no simplicity, and whose every word seems to have been studied or prepared, it's all planned like he's acting, is more to be shunned than a viper. That's the dissembler. So let's just make a quick list. Things we see about the dissembler, right? He has evil intentions. The dissembler has evil intentions. He is constantly working to conceal those intentions. He's concealing. From that last paragraph, we learned that he is not, quote unquote, simple. And by simple, we mean just honest and sincere. He's not sincere. He's not simple. He's concealing. He has evil intentions. And just to make this clearer, what we mean by concealing is that he's always acting to try to hide the reality of what he's doing. He acts innocent. He acts friendly. But while he's acting friendly, while he's acting innocently, he's secretly planning and working behind the scenes to do evil things. Talking about you behind your back, secretly trying to ruin something that you're doing, steal something from you. What makes him a dissembler, what it means to be a dissembler, is this concealing evil intentions. If you don't like someone, that's okay. You can tell someone, I don't like you. We don't get along. I think it's best if we don't spend time together because we just don't get along. I really don't like you. Our personalities don't get along. That's honest. Sometimes that's true. But with him, it's always acting, always concealing his evil intentions. And he's got this whole character that is this actor, pretending to be nice while he does evil. That's the dissembler, okay? So that's our first lesson. I want you to make sure you study this lesson carefully. And again, make sure you pay attention to the details of the characters. He's not just a liar. You understand that? He's not just a liar. He's not just a guy who's friendly. He's not just insincere. He's not just sneaky. You have to make sure you understand exactly what it means to be a dissembler. He's a person who conceals evil intentions and acts towards other people as if he's good when he is secretly evil. And there are ways that there are things about his character that we can look for and catch him. Flattery, overreacting to things you say, contradicting himself, saying one thing at one time and then at another he's saying something else. People who are sincere and simple don't do those things. And so we're warned by Theophrastus to be on the watch for someone who acts like a dissembler. All right? That's all for our first lesson.